Even before I moved here, I brought people up here, specifically to this part of Mount Washington, and shared the statue with them, and it says the stories. And quite honestly, as I'm talking to you about it right now, I'm getting a little chill. Just
nice thing.
Seriously, and
Thank you.
Know and understand that this is such a large part of our history and culture. I'm meeting you. Wait till I tell my face.
Well, thank you.
Truly
Man,
incredible.
You're humbling.
Thank you
You're
for
Thank you.
this and giving it to the city.
Thank you.
And there's always so many people that come here to admire it as well.
I did a sculpture of George Washington and a Native American named Guyasuta.
The story of Guyasuta, who's a famous Seneca chief, is a central historical figure in this region. His name should be as well known as George Washington, John Forbes, any of the great leaders who were here in the region in the 18th century. He's, as we learned through our historical inquiry and getting some cultural, background from DJ Huff, who's a Seneca friend of ours, that, he's at the heart of everything that goes on here for many years.
There's sometimes a disconnect between, history and reality. My genealogy goes right to Corn Planter. Corn Planter was the nephew of Guyasuta. Guyasuta was the war captain for Pontiac during his rebellion. Corn Planter was very instrumental with, war. Everything that he learned from Guyasuta really helped develop the Seneca Nation into who they are today. Guyasuta really did help establish government-to-government relations between Native people and, the federal government. Those treaties are still talked about today. That Corn Planter, Guyasuta's nephews, they signed off on.
Guyasuta is a leader who is so deeply involved here in terms of diplomacy, trade, warfare, that his story should be known by everybody in this region.
There was some debate when it went through the Art Commission to get it approved locally.
The controversy over at the Art Commission of Pittsburgh was, do we really want to talk about this? We really treated indigenous people bad.
Because the whole point was George Washington having, fought in the French and Indian War, and also had met Guyasuta early on in that war, and Guyasuta was
his guide.
He was his guide. At the end of the war, and this is post-French and Indian War, but before the American Revolution,
right.
George Washington had promised a lot of guys some land for fighting in that war, from here down the Ohio. And so here he is surveying. He comes down and he's looking at plots of land. He runs into Guyasuta. They have this 9-hour, I think, long council, sitting at a fire and talking things over and rehashing the past and going over what promises were made, yes. Because there was a treaty that said no white settlement west of the Alleghenies. So here's our man looking for land. And then it became a question of, how do we make that happen? Because there was all kinds of zoning stuff. There were art commission permissions going through the Mount Washington Community Development Corporation. There was getting the funding. Originally we didn't have this location in mind. There was a woman named Bernie Lynch who was on the Mount Washington CDC board. She was also instrumental in helping with ideas and helping this happen.
Timing was perfect when we met because you were doing the French and Indian War for PBS. You knew all the history, and you got me involved with the people from the Smithsonian.
A group of historians that were working on the film that became also instrumental in consulting on the costume, the relationship. So It was Alan Gutchess, Scott Stevenson,
Jamie Panisi.
Who was half indigenous, and he actually helped us push this through the Art Commission.
Here, it wouldn't have gotten through without. And Jamie Panisi and the crew as a whole, the team said, I hope we have civil conversation about it. They're equal. We need to talk about this. We need to have civil dialogue. And to me, that was the strength in it for me, from day one.
We know that every story that we tell here at Fort Pitt is an American Indian story on some level. American Indians are here first. Seneca people, Delaware people, Shawnee people are all here in the 18th century. And so their stories are central to everything that we tell. And Guyasuta is a leader who is so deeply involved here in the Ohio country in every event in terms of diplomacy, trade, warfare, that we felt that his story should be known by everybody in this region.
So when you're working on the maquette, what images do you really feel like you wanted to portray in this? Like, I see like two strong men there.
I wanted equal, but I wanted tension. I wanted the weapons there, but they were set aside. They were at peace. So I wanted to portray where they came from in their own history. Paul from the Seneca Reservation modeled for me, which I was very appreciative of. And he said, listen, I'll do it for you, but I can't be a cigar store Indian. We can't have that. And I said, I promise. And I will do it with respect because I don't know your traditions, and I can do it as a storyteller.
Did you struggle at all with trying to portray what was in your mind?
Absolutely.
Or did it just come out of your hands?
I always wanted the passion of them being equal, and I always wanted there to be that intensity. I assume because they're together that there's an intensity. I stuck with the story as they were together, they were apart, they fought, and they're having civil conversation, and they're equal. Hopefully that's where I ended up at the end of the day.
I think that's where we all want to end up. Nobody wants to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to fight with somebody. Nobody ever wants to wake up and say, I'm going to have a disagreement. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to feel bad about another person. When those things do come up and you do feel bad, you do feel angry, you do, fight, I think that's the whole goal of like what our parents try to teach us, our grandparents try to teach us, is try to work things out, try to talk things out. If I live a simple life, I live in a little old log cabin myself. All I got is, a wood stove and oil lamps. But I do have weapons of war in there. I don't use them for war no more. I don't use them for, to hurt people. Weapons can be that of peace too. What greater thing can a warrior have than a weapon and not use it? That's a symbol. You're holding it in your hand, you're ready to fight, but you don't want to. I think that's a really good representation of what's going on with that statue. They're looking eye to eye. They're not paying attention to their weapons. They're exchanging energy. They're trying to understand each other. I think that's pretty powerful, looking eye to eye to a person that you may once have looked as an enemy.
What do you think the biggest misconception about Native Americans are?
That we're not here. And it's the one thing that, is pretty common throughout Native America, is the perception that we're defeated. We're not defeated. Seneca people are still in their tribal homelands. What does defeat look like? If defeat looks like, you won a war, good for you. But really, who won? We're right where we're supposed to be. On my family land, my family stayed there since before the United States was a thing. On this little tract of land, my family never moved. Maybe there's concepts that people had placed upon them growing up as kids, and then all of a sudden you're staring at a Native person right in the face, and you're like, that's not totally true. Has some elements of truth to it, and let me take you away and show you why things happen. It makes me feel pretty happy, to tell you the truth. I think the whole point is to really help cross boundaries that, you know, have been absent for so long.
Peace start
Means
with
a lot.
us, right?
Yes, yes. Thank you.